You're not gonna like where this story begins, because it doesn't start with wisdom or clarity or some enlightened decision. It starts with a man in his early 50s who was absolutely sure he had life figured out. It starts with me, and if this goes well, it will not end with you making the same mistake. For most of my life, I was the kind of person people pointed to and said, he's doing it right. Good job, good income, good house, good reputation. I checked every box that was handed to me. Work hard, get promoted, buy a bigger place, put money away for retirement, be successful. From the outside, it looked like a life to admire. On the inside, it was a life on autopilot. I didn't know that yet. I thought feeling vaguely tired, slightly empty, and constantly busy was just what adulthood felt like. The truth didn't show up as some mystical revelation. It showed up as a sharp pain in my chest in the middle of a meeting about quarterly numbers. I remember the fluorescent lights first, too bright, too white. I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room with a spreadsheet on the screen and a dozen people pretending to care about projections 5 years into the future. I was talking, pointing at a slide, when the room tilted just a little, like the floor had shifted under my chair. My tongue felt heavy. The words on the screen blurred. A burning pressure crawled up my chest and into my left arm. I tried to keep talking. That's the insane part. Even as my vision narrowed and sweat started to gather on my forehead, I was still trying to finish my sentence about revenue streams. Someone asked, "Are you okay?" I remember forcing a smile and saying, "Yeah, just need some air," before the world turned into a tunnel of noise and then nothing. When the lights came back, they were softer, kinder, far more terrifying. It was the ceiling of a hospital, not the conference room. There were tubes in my arms, a monitor beeping somewhere to my left, and the air smelled like disinfectant and plastic. In the corner of the room, my wife was sitting in a plastic chair, her hands over her face, shoulders shaking. She looked up when I made a sound, and the relief on her face hurt more than my chest. A doctor appeared where the projector screen should have been and said words like cardiac event and lucky. I heard, "Your heart tried to kill you," and "You got here in time." He smiled the professional smile of someone who has good news under bad circumstances. "You're fortunate," he said. "This could have gone very differently." Fortunate. I stared at the ceiling and tried to make that word fit what I was feeling. Fortunate that my own body had finally pushed the emergency brake I refused to touch. Fortunate that I had come just close enough to death to see it looking back at me. Fortunate that I was still here, yes. But lying in that bed, listening to the machines announce every beat of a heart that had almost stopped, the only thing I felt was this. I had no idea what I was doing with my life. Here is the part you need to hear while you still have time to do something about it. When you are lying in a hospital bed with wires on your chest, you do not think about your resume. You do not think about how impressive your LinkedIn looks, or how many people respect your work ethic, or how close you are to a promotion. You think about everything you have not done. Everything you kept telling yourself you would do later. I didn't think about the house I was so proud to buy. I thought about the empty chair at family dinners where I should have been. I didn't think about the car in the driveway. I thought about the trips I promised my wife we would take when things calmed down at work. I didn't think about the titles on my business card. I thought about the fact that my son had stopped asking if I could come to his games because he already knew the answer. Lying there, listening to my own heartbeat amplified on a monitor, one question kept circling my mind. If this is it, if this is how my story ends, what have I actually lived for? Not what did I achieve, not what did people think of me. Just one simple thing. Was I truly alive? Or was I just busy? The answer, if I was brave enough to say it, was devastating. I had spent decades chasing things that did not care whether I lived or died. When you're young, no one tells you this in a way that truly sinks in. They tell you to work hard, to build something, to be responsible. They tell you to plan for the future, and you should. But there's a dangerous sentence that sneaks in underneath all of that. A sentence so common you might not even hear it anymore. It goes like this: there's still time. You think you have time to call your parents later, time to repair that relationship after the next deadline, time to take that trip next year, time to write that book, start that project, tell that person how you really feel, time to live the life you actually want when you're more stable, less busy, better prepared. Time, time, time. Let me tell you what that sentence really is. It is a soft, polite, perfectly acceptable way to waste your one and only life. I had believed in later like a religion. I told myself that once I hit a certain income, then I would relax. Once we paid off the house, then we would travel. Once the kids were older, then I would have time to pursue my own passions. There was always a then. The problem is, then kept moving. Every time I got close, the bar shifted a little further away. There was always another promotion, another project, another reason to wait. That hospital bed was the first time later was not guaranteed. The weeks after I came home were the strangest of my life. Physically, I was healing. The doctors told me to walk, to eat better, to take my pills, to manage my stress. They gave me instructions for my body. No one gave me instructions for my soul. I would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, listening to the quiet of my own house in the middle of the day, and feel lost. Who was I if I wasn't the guy who stayed late? Who was I if I wasn't the one everyone depended on at the office? What was left if you took away the endless emails and the calendar full of meetings and the constant chase for more? One afternoon, not long after I came home, my daughter came into the kitchen. She was in her late teens then. She stared at me for a second, like she was trying to decide whether to say something. Then she asked, very casually, "So, how long are you going to be home?" I told her I didn't know yet. She nodded. "It's just weird," she said. "You're usually not here." She left the room. I sat at that table and let those words sink in. You're usually not here. A simple observation, but beneath it was a truth so sharp it felt like a second heart attack. My own child had grown up in a house where my absence was normal. That night in bed, staring at the ceiling again, I realized something that should terrify you. You can be physically alive and emotionally absent for years, decades. You can sit at the same table and still not really be there. You can hear someone talking but not actually listen. You can live in the same home and still be a stranger. The story I want to tell you before it's too late is not just about nearly dying. It's about what happened after I decided I was done pretending that busy was the same thing as important. The first change I made wasn't dramatic. I didn't quit my job overnight or sell everything I owned. The first change was this: I stopped lying to myself about time. I stopped saying, "I'll do it later," and forced myself to translate that sentence into what it really meant. This is not important enough to me to do while I'm still alive. When you say it that way, a lot of excuses fall apart very quickly. I picked up my phone and called my mother. I didn't text. I didn't send a funny video. I called. She was surprised. Parents always are when the child who is too busy suddenly has time. We talked for an hour about nothing and everything. I hung up and realized I could not remember the last time we had done that. Next, I called my younger brother. We hadn't really spoken in years, not properly. There had been small conflicts that turned into silence, misunderstandings that turned into distance. I kept telling myself we'd sort it out one day. My heart attack had almost stolen that day forever. We talked. It was awkward. It was honest. It was worth every second. Then I did something that would have seemed impossible to the man in that conference room. I started saying no at work. The first time, my voice shook. I was asked to take on another big project, the kind that would look great on a performance review and terrible on a hospital monitor. I said, I can't commit to that right now. The world did not end. No one burst into flames. In fact, something surprising happened. People adjusted. They found another solution. It turned out I was not the irreplaceable engine of the universe. Life went on. Every no I said to something meaningless opened a little bit of space for something that mattered. That space was uncomfortable at first. When you've spent years drowning in work, stillness feels like emptiness. But slowly, that emptiness filled with things I had been starving for. Long dinners with my family, unhurried walks, quiet mornings with a book instead of a phone, actual hobbies. I remember the first time I took a weekend trip with my wife after the heart attack. Nothing exotic, just a small town a few hours away. We sat in a cafe, watching people walk by, and she laughed at something. Really laughed, the way she used to when we were young. I realized I hadn't seen that particular laugh in years. Not because it had disappeared, but because I had not given it any room to exist. Here is another thing no one tells you when you are young. The people you love are not waiting in suspension for you to finish being busy. They are living their lives, with or without you. Children grow, parents age, friends move on. Relationships do not pause and patiently wait for you to finally show up. They quietly adjust around your absence. If you continue to choose later, life will quietly choose without you. Around this time, I started noticing older people in a way I never had before. In parks, on benches, in cafes. I wondered about their regrets. I wondered if they too once sat in meetings about quarterly forecasts thinking, this is what matters. One afternoon, I watched an elderly man sit alone on a bench for almost an hour, staring at the playground where kids were running and screaming and laughing. He smiled sometimes, but there was a heaviness in his posture, a slowness in the way he stood up when he finally left. I never talked to him, but in my mind, he became a warning. This is what it looks like when you realize too late that you invested your time in the wrong things. I decided I did not want to meet my future self on a bench like that and have him be a stranger. You might be wondering, at this point, what all of this has to do with you. Maybe you're not 52. Maybe you're 25 or 30 or 15. Maybe your heart is strong, your body is young, your doctors are bored with how healthy you are. Maybe you think you're immune to this story. You're not. Because this isn't a story about a heart attack. It's a story about a mindset that is killing people long before their bodies give out. You don't need a hospital bed to waste your life. You just need a phone, a job you don't question, a schedule you didn't really choose, and a story in your head that says, this is just how it is. You scroll, you rush, you say yes to everything that is urgent, and maybe later to everything that is important. You go to sleep tired and wake up tired and call it normal. So here is the part of the story where I turn to you and ask you to do something uncomfortable. Imagine, just for a moment, that tonight is your last night on this earth. No drama, No cinematic music, just a simple fact. Tomorrow does not arrive. The messages you plan to send tomorrow are never written. The trip you're sure you'll take one day never happens. The people you assume will always be there will have to stand by a wooden box and talk about who you were. What stories will they tell? Will they talk about how many hours you spent at the office? How quickly you replied to emails? How impressive your car was? Or will they talk about moments? The time you showed up when it mattered, the way you made them feel heard, the laugh you shared on some random Tuesday afternoon, the advice you gave when they were falling apart, the way your presence made a room feel different.
More importantly, what story would you tell yourself in those last hours about the life you lived? Would you be proud of how you spent your time? Or would you wish for just one more year? Not to work more, but to fix what you ignored. If your answer makes you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is a sign that the story you are living and the story you want are not the same. When I ask people what they would change if they could go back 10 years, they rarely say, "I wish I had spent more time at the office," or "I wish I had bought more things." They say, "I wish I had been braver. I wish I had told them I loved them. I wish I had started sooner." Regret is not about what we did. It is about what we never allowed ourselves to do. You might think the solution is drastic. Quit your job, move to another country, burn everything down. Sometimes radical change is necessary, but most of the time it starts much smaller and much closer to home.
It starts with turning off your phone and having a real conversation with someone you care about. It starts with saying, "No, I can't make that meeting," and "Yes, I can make that dinner." It starts with walking outside without headphones and noticing the world you live in. It starts with writing the first awkward paragraph of the book you've been meaning to write. It starts with booking the ticket, even if the timing isn't perfect. It starts with saying, "I love you," even if your voice shakes. The biggest lie I believed for 52 years was that one day life would slow down on its own and politely hand me time to do these things. It won't. Life fills every space you give it with demands and distractions. You have to carve out meaning on purpose. You have to decide that some things are worth protecting with the word no. Years after that moment in the hospital, my life is not simpler in the way I once imagined. It's not all beaches and sunsets and freedom from responsibility. I still have bills. I still have obligations. I still mess up. I still waste time sometimes. The difference is that I am awake now. I notice when I am slipping back into autopilot. I hear the old sentence, "I'll do it later," and I stop. I ask myself, if I died in a week, would I be okay with never doing this? If the answer is no, I find a way to start.
I have sat at tables with my children as they became adults and really listened to them. I have apologized for the years I was not there. I have traveled to some of the places I used to only see in magazines. Not all of them, but enough to know what it feels like to stand somewhere you once thought was just a picture. I have written words that mattered to me, even if they never become a bestseller. I have told people I love that I love them over and over until it feels normal instead of dramatic. I am in my 70s now. I do not know how many years I have left. None of us do. But I can tell you this with absolute certainty. These last years, lived with intention instead of inertia, are worth more than all the decades I spent sleepwalking through my own life. And that is the heart of the story I wanted to tell you before it is too late. For you, not for me. You do not have to wait for a crisis to wake up. You do not have to carry 52 years of regret before you decide to live differently. You have a choice that I did not realize I had back then.